Hello and welcome to Fred Asquith on the Ball, aka Fob. Me and you are going to be chatting sports. Yeah, that's right. My side quests continue. I have a film called podcast, Fred Asquith on Film, and I'm clearly gotten very good at it. And so I thought, hey, I want to talk about all my passions online if possible. I want there to be no stone unturned when it comes to me talking about the things in my brain. So the next stone to turn would be sports. And the first thing that happened when I started an Instagram profile, TikTok profile at Fred Asquith on the Ball, which is a reference to the Ant and Dec song, We're on the ball, we're on the ball, Shall I stop singing that with that much eye contact? It's a bit fucked, isn't it? The 2002 England national football team World Cup song, if you weren't aware. And I have wondered if I could use it as a theme tune for this podcast. Turns out there's a lot of legal obstacles to getting that to happen, but I'll keep trying. Anyway, on the ball it's more of like an umbrella term to mean I'm going to be talking about ball being an umbrella term itself for sports, because I love lots and lots of sports. I truly love them, right? And I got a couple of comments when I started my Instagram profile being like, some people were like, oh, but you don't even like sports. Some people were confused that I could ever be interested in sport. I think this is partly the problem, right? My problem with sort of internet persona in general is that the algorithm insists that you only post about one particular thing. So on my main profile, at Fred Asquith, that is my love for my darling wife. That is true and that is authentically me. But there are other me's that exist. Just like you out there will have multiple interests, so do I. So I had to start my film profile to be able to talk about film in a way that the algorithm wouldn't kick me in the bollocks. And now starting the sports profile and associated podcast. So here we go. So let me just talk through my sport loving credentials. Not so much credentials, because I'm not trying to fucking prove myself to you, but let me just talk you through what I'm interested in, right? Very much interested in football. We'll dive into that in a second. Very much interested in golf. I'm a terrible player, but I watch it, especially obviously watch all the majors, but I keep up with the PGA Tour in general. Very interested in F1. I'm not so much watching that live at the moment, but I do dip in and out live. I watch the highlights of every qualifying and race. Very much interested in tennis. That is just the majors. I can see myself talking about them. Very much interested in boxing. I have loved the whole Usyk, Fury, Joshua era, which is coming to an end. You know, we could potentially have a Joshua Fury fight towards the end of this year. Very much interested in snooker. That's something I've watched since I'm a kid. I'm not just part of the "Go on, Ronnie" brigade, but I do love Ronnie O'Sullivan, and snooker for me is my favorite like hangover pastime. It is such a comfort watch. I absolutely love sticking snooker on during those dark winter months, and it just goes. BBC just goes on forever. I fucking love it. Darts. Who doesn't love the darts? See, darts is one that I don't know much about, but does anyone really? Who actually really, like, who's going to fucking Ali Pali and getting pissed and knows loads about darts? Like, you're just there for the vibes, right? But I'm open to anything. You know, we've got fucking Olympics coming up. You know, I will pretty much watch anything, but those are the ones that I'm like clued up on. So that's what you can expect on Fob. Fob's a bit of a weird what's the word, abbreviation in it, because it's Fred Asquith on the Ball, which is technically FATB, but Fob is my film podcast called FOF, Fred on Film, Fob, Fred on Ball, whatever. Fred Asquith on the Ball. It's all right. So football wise, let's just dive into football, because that's going to be the main topic of this opening episode, because obviously the World Cup's just finished. I got a couple of questions when I started the profile. Do I have a team? Meaning, really, do I have a team in the Premier League or the Championship? That's basically what people mean. No. If you had to attribute me to a team, it would be Scarborough Athletic, right? I'm from Scarborough, and Scarborough Athletic are in the fucking lower tiers. I don't even know what they're in because I don't even support them, right? Point being is, when I was growing up, I really got into football. I played for all my youth teams. The problem was my family never were into football. My granddad a bit, but he never really had a team. Well, he didn't. None of my family had a team. We lived in a town with, at the time, was Scarborough FC. So I went to watch Scarborough FC with my dad, and so I technically did support them, right? But then they went bankrupt in 2007, And Scarborough Athletic came out from the ashes of that. But really, I wasn't into it. I wasn't engaged with the team at that point, or what the team had morphed into. And I kind of, when I was younger, I would look around for like who to support, and you know, I didn't want to just be a Glory supporter. I didn't want to just support someone because they were nearby. Because like nearby was like Middlesbrough. Hate the city. Never liked going there. Loved you all from Middlesbrough. You know, I mean, it's nothing against you. I just didn't have a personal relationship with the city. Let me say that. York. I went to uni in York. Never went to watch the team play. Again, don't have a massive affinity with that city. Even when I went to uni there, I never really fell in love with it. Leeds, don't have a huge relationship with Leeds. Newcastle just feels too far away. Point being is that Hull, could have been Hull. I mean, they were in the Premier League when I was younger. Point being is, I just never fell in love with a club enough to justify me supporting them, like actually supporting them. And like I say, I didn't want to be a Glory supporter. My uncle supports Man U, and we all knew that he just supported Man U because they were winning when he was younger. You know what I mean? I just didn't want to be that. So I've grown up always watching the Premier League, but not supporting anyone. Just watching it. And when the World Cup comes around, that teaches me that I actually love that that's the case, because I get so depressed when England get knocked out of major tournaments that I always think, oh, fuck, thank God I don't have to think that every single fucking week if I support someone who loses. I can't take that feeling on a weekly basis. I can take it on a bi-annual basis. You know what I mean? So I watch all the England friendlies as well. So I kind of support England, but that makes me sound like a fucking like casual fan. Like I love football. I'm watching it all, but yeah, I just don't have a club. I actually randomly, before I ever posted anything about sport, got the chance to interview Ian Wright a couple of years ago. And it was one of the weirdest like opportunities I've ever had. And anyway, I asked him that question. I said, how do you feel about me loving football but not supporting a team? And it's on film. It's on my profile like way, way back. I might link it maybe. But he was like, yeah, I just can't understand that. So yeah, no one really, people often don't understand it, but I'm telling you, it's true. So let me just dive in, since we're on the sort of football chat, let me just dive into my post-mortem on what happened with England. The discussion after the Argentina semi-final loss has been around, does Tuchel keep his job or not, right? Or how culpable was Tuchel versus how culpable were the players and blah, blah, blah. Here's my take on it, and I feel like there's been something missing in the discourse about this game that has really frustrated me. So immediately after the game, there was a lot of vitriol against Tuchel, right? There was a lot of sort of, he caused this, his subs and blah, blah, blah. And then there was sort of the backlash to that, or the reassessment of that, when the tactical accounts and other pundits came out and said, hey, look, and Tuchel himself came out and said, England sat back, the players sat back before Tuchel made any changes, and Tuchel was actually telling them to go for a second goal. And there was a bit of confusion between the sort of, in the press, between the players and Tuchel about like what the directive was and who was to blame for this situation. And I do think there has to be an element of blame, at least distributed amongst a group of people. It doesn't have to be directed at one person, but there is blame to give, right? So that's where I start. That's where I'm starting this off. So then I want to go on and say, my issue was, we score the goal. We don't make a substitution till I think it was the 72nd minute. So that's 55th minute we score a goal. 72nd minute we make a substitution. Within that time, Argentina make, I think it's 3 subs. It might have been 4. Obviously, they're chasing a game. I've got a whole point to make here, right? That basically, that's my problem. My problem isn't whether the team mentally sat back, because that's sort of part of the England DNA. Maybe I can see evidence to say that that's true, because we have a different manager and it still happened again. And it happened while Tuchel was telling him to go for a second goal, blah, blah, blah. And maybe, yes, in Tuchel's substitutions, he then doubled down and compounded the problem by sort of communicating to the players through the subs that we're going to try and defend this lead out, right? That's by the by. I think you can sort of split the responsibilities there. But I think what tips the balance for me is no subs between 55 and 72 minutes when, A, Argentina were making many, many subs and chasing a game with fresh legs. B, Tuchel knows England to do this because in his opening interview with the England channel, upon accepting the job, he said, at the final of Euro 2024, when we lost in a similar manner, not dissimilar manner, he said, I saw a team that was more scared to lose than they were excited to win. And if he's done his research, which I'm sure he has, he's seen that we went out in a similar fashion in the final of Euro 2021 to Italy and in the semi-final of World Cup 2018 against Croatia. So he knows that that's a thing. He talked about it in his opening interview. It was almost like top of the agenda for his tenure was that problem. So I'm not buying that he's trying to communicate some narrative that he got to that point in that game, the biggest game, the moment that he was hired for, and was in any way surprised by this problem that he was faced with, that the players were sitting back. Because not only is that a problem that he clearly knew about because he mentioned it, but it's a problem that every single fucking person on earth knows about, including my nan. Do you know what I mean? Like, every casual England fan knows that that's been a problem that we've had, not just for the 10 years since Southgate took over, but since we've all been alive, basically. Letting go of leads, losing grasp of something that we had hold of. So, Tuchel was brought on to win. Also in those opening interviews, and we were made aware by the FA in the contract, he's brought in to win the World Cup. He's since signed an extension to the contract, which clearly gives the impression that his remit wasn't just to win the World Cup, but to show some form of progression to then have a chance at Euro 2028. Okay? That kind of pissed me off because I think I personally think, well, I'll speak for myself, I liked the directive that Tuchel had this clear, we need to win the World Cup, put a second star on our shirt. And I think he said something along the lines of, if I don't do that, then I'll leave because that's my directive, right? That's my objective. So then we're in this like murky middle ground where like that's not necessarily the case anymore. Point being is he was brought in to get us over that hurdle, just on a sort of wider point of view, and knew the mental problems that had stopped us getting over that hurdle in the past because he mentioned it himself. So not only are those two things true, but he then went on to not make any subs at a crucial time to capitalise on our goal. And if you look at the momentum graphs and the chances, there was a chance to capitalise on our goal between 55 and 60 minutes. We had a couple more openings with a high press, right? He fails to make a sub in that time. Argentina, in the meantime, get loads and loads of fresh legs. That, to me, is a failure of forward thinking, a failure of planning. And I'm not just talking in the moment. I'm talking in since 18 months since he took the job. He should have been going in, knowing, because he clearly had seen it. This is a team where the main issue is they sit back and try and defend a 1-goal lead when it truly matters, okay? The only reason we got away with that previously was because we defended like hell against Mexico and Norway, who were inferior teams. So he should have been planning like fuck for that specific eventuality. 1-0 up in a big game. That eventuality. I know it's not the same as the Mexico game. It's not the same as the Norway game. Norway are an inferior team. Okay, first thing. And we were coming back from 1-0 down. So there was more of like a feeling of backs against the wall there. Mexico was a different game because we were down to 10 men and we were at altitude where our players were literally physiologically incapable of keeping up with the opposition team. Not to mention the fact we had 10 men, like I said. So they're completely different situations that warranted the defensive tactics. He compounded our defensive, fragile mentality in the semi-final against a superior team where none of the other factors applied. That, to me, is a catastrophic failure of leadership, full stop, and of the leadership that he was supposed to bring. He was brought in to fix that exact moment, and not only didn't he fix it, but he compounded it. And nobody is talking about the fact that by not making a sub after we scored, not one sub until 72 minutes when things were already looking very pear-shaped. That's the real compounding. The subs after that, it's already dead and gone by that point. Like, I think everyone who knows knew, watching that, something is very fucking wrong here. This isn't just in hindsight. I was calling it out in the moment. Even my darling wife, at about 65 minutes, said, Argentina have used a lot of subs, and we haven't made one yet. She doesn't give a shit, right? She doesn't give a shit about the game, and even she spotted it. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's just same old, same old. I think back to Southgate not making subs until the 80th minute for some reason, then bringing Ivan Toney on the 94th minute. Oh, lo and behold, we did that again. So Tuchel not only made the mistakes of Southgate, but he'd already known that they'd been made in the past, and he was supposed to overcome that. And he made them arguably worse than Southgate ever did by sitting us deeper than he ever did, earlier than he ever did. That to me is a catastrophic failure of his management, entirely in contradiction to why he was brought on, and therefore shouldn't have the job anymore. Now, he's now in this murky middle ground where his words after the game were a bit inflammatory against the players, but relatively passable. It is our best finish since 1966, third place, right? That to me is a technicality. You know, we got to the semi-final in 2018 with Southgate. We lost in a very similar manner. Fair enough, we lost the third place playoff against Belgium, but the 6-4 win against France, although crazy and fun to watch, to me doesn't really absolve him of anything. It doesn't mean much in terms of the third place finish, and therefore that justifying why he should stay or whatever. In actual fact, even though it did have the vibe of a testimonial, he nearly made the same mistake twice we were 4-0 up, and then it went to 4-3, and we didn't make any fucking subs. I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, he literally hasn't learned his lesson from 3 days ago. Anyway, lucky for him, we ended up winning 6-4. It was just a ridiculous game. You just can't judge it based on the intensity levels of that game. Look, that was a let-off for him. The third place playoff was a let-off, because I think if we get battered in that game, or if we lose a lead, like we look like we threatened to do at one point, it's maybe a different conversation. Which brings me on to, you know, I kind of felt depressed, not only because we lost, but I felt depressed that, like, oh no, now we're sticking by a manager, the FA have said, that I just spiritually just don't almost trust anymore. And I know some of you will be screaming at the screen saying, but he got us to semi-final, he got us to third place. Think of all the moments that were so amazing along the way. Yeah, I know. But in terms of the progressive play that he was brought on to do, when can we really say we did that? 55 minutes versus Argentina was fantastic. 45 minutes versus Croatia was fantastic. In between there, not very scintillating. So not much of an improvement from Southgate there. Some in-game management was really good. Obviously against Mexico, fantastic. But we finished third. He didn't achieve the objective he was brought on to do. And he not only did he not achieve it, but he failed at it in a very similar manner, with a very similar vibe to how Southgate did. So I'm just like, I don't know. And I know you're asking me, well, who else could come on? For me, that's not the problem. For me, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, which I think we should be coming to it. You know, Pep is talking to the Italian Federation about potentially being Italy manager. Pep Guardiola would obviously be an upgrade for all intents and purposes. It's arguable whether he could instill his tactics in a short space of time with an international team. That's a separate issue. But then secondarily to that, I'll get my receipts up from fucking Reddit, right? I was back in the day before Tuchel was appointed, and on my previous socials, I was calling for Lee Carsley to be appointed manager. The going conversation with Lee Carsley is, oh, well, he was brought on for his interim tenure for 6 games in the Nations League group stage, and he shit the bed. I've seen some comments literally saying the phrase, he shit the bed. He didn't shit the bed. We actually won 5 of those 6 games, not only convincingly, but with style. We lost a game 2-1 against Greece because he went extremely experimental, took off Harry Kane, started Cole Palmer and Bellingham up top, started Grealish, started every fucking number 10 you could imagine, and it didn't really work. And he learned that lesson because then we went to play Greece again, away, and we won 3-0. I was calling for Lee Carsley. We've seen with the Spanish team, De La Fuente coached the under-21s and has now taken the Spanish team to Euros and World Cup successive wins. Lee Carsley can be our guy, right? So even if it's not Pep, I think we have Lee Carsley. And if it's not Pep or Lee, I think we have Eddie Howe. You know, and regardless, right? For me, this isn't the conversation. For me, the conversation is, have we seen evidence to show that Tuchel is a tangible improvement on what came before to justify the trust for another tournament cycle? For me, no. Now, it looks like we're going to keep him. So my way of sort of calming myself down is to say two things. One, he's an intelligent guy. I hope he can learn from it this time, right? Because he obviously didn't learn from watching us before he came on board. I hope he learns from this. It sounds like he is going to learn from this. He's talking about how we need, and the next step is for us to learn how to keep the ball in high pressure moments and stuff. It sounds like he could learn from it, but I hope he learns from his failure of substitutions as well, in terms of the delay and then also the nature of them. The second thing that calms me down is that just by chance, we're in the top tier of the Nations League now. The Nations League group stage starts proper in September, and we happen to play Spain, who happen to be the world champions, who we would have played in the final had we not shit the bed against Argentina. So Tuchel has an opportunity very soon to right the wrongs of Argentina, show us we can beat a big team in a competitive game, because it is genuinely competitive, I would say, Nations League, although the trophy itself is of lower caliber, and against the team that we would have played if he hadn't have made the mistakes. So if we play well in those games, if we maybe win those games, we have one home and away against Spain, then I'll be sat here being like, okay, fair, let's go ahead. But if we play badly in those games, if we see patterns of the same mistakes, or if we lose those games, I can see the groundswell of sort of Tuchel out conversations rising to possibly my level, and it might become a more legitimate conversation. So I just think it's very lucky we have those Nations League games, because it normally when you go back before Nations League, you'd go back into a tournament cycle and you'd be like, well, we're stuck with this guy for another 2 years, and that's a waste of fucking time. So I'm thinking Roy Hodgson between 2014 and 2016. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, how he stayed on, I have no idea. But it's not the case this time, because we have a competitive game against a big team that we can genuinely judge Tuchel on. And I'm excited for the Nations League. I was talking with my darling wife about it yesterday. She was sick of the sight of me by the end of this rant, but I was talking to her and saying the Nations League does not mean anything, right? In terms of it's coming home, in terms of the years of hurt, the Nations League would not solve that. We all know that. But I think it could be, if we do perform well in the Nations League, let's say hypothetically we could win that, right? We're in the group stage, and then that goes to a semi-final and a final next year, TBC on the location. Depends who gets there, right? It could be an opportunity to see England win something, right? And I know what you're saying, but that something means nothing. Well, yes and no. It means nothing in the sense of the trophy, but in terms of our mentality, could be fucking huge, okay? What I think about is, this is Fred Asquith on the ball, talking about other sports here. What I think about is, remember when Andy Murray won Wimbledon finally, right? What happened was, he got to quarters, semis, like in the preceding years. You saw this progression. And then he lost in a final to Roger Federer, right? And then, that very same year, he played Roger Federer in the Olympics final at Wimbledon on centre court. And he won that game. He won the gold medal, right? I'm convinced he goes on to win Wimbledon the very next year, straight sets against Djokovic, arguably in his prime. I'm convinced, I've always been convinced, that Andy Murray does not win the next year's Wimbledon if he doesn't win that Olympic gold medal on centre court. Because although he'd already won the US Open, I see that as a huge mental shift where he can He's felt what he's felt what it feels like to win on that court with that crowd, with the home support, which is a different kind of pressure. He felt what it felt like, and he took that onto the next Wimbledon, and he won. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I can see if England were to lift the Nations League trophy, which is a massive hypothetical because there's a group stage, semi-final, final, but I'm just blue sky thinking here, right? If England were to lift the Nations League trophy, that would be a massive mental shift. It would be the first trophy we'd seen England lift of any kind since I think it was the Toulon tournament in the 90s that Ian Wright won. And yeah, it would be the first trophy since then. Because there's not many trophies going around in international football, is there? So, I mean, what else can you win? So, yes, the trophy wouldn't matter in terms of nominally what the trophy is, but I think it could matter hugely for England. If Tuchel were to do that, that would take us with massive confidence into the Euros, and having already felt that feeling of winning, we would be able to almost like play pretend. We'd almost like be able to simulate that feeling of a competitive game, because it is a competitive game, but simulate it somewhat, because we know deep down it doesn't really matter, right? But there's the pressure. It's like we're play acting. It would be an unbelievable opportunity. We get to sort of be like in a game that matters, but it doesn't matter. So we're able to play with pressure, simulate that pressure, respond to that pressure, and then hopefully overcome that pressure. And that, to me, is a golden opportunity to have a small stepping stone to winning Euro 2028 on our home turf. We know that England perform incredibly well on our home turf. We've had 1966, we fucking won the thing. Euro 96, we got to the semis and we're unlucky. And Euro 2021, we lost a couple of kicks in the final against Italy. So we know that a home tournament provides a massive opportunity to win the Euros. We know that other victories by nations often come in their home tournaments, France 98, for example. This is a huge opportunity for us. And I think if we were to perform well and win the Nations League, that would be a massive step for us. So that's my... Oh, sorry, one more thing, actually. I have no physical receipt for this, so you're just going to have to believe me. I know you're not going to believe me, but whatever, I don't give a shit, right? I'm just going to say it. I was walking home from the Euro 2024 final loss with my darling wife. And on that night, I was walking home from Box Park, Shoreditch. I said to my darling wife, we're going to lose in 2026 and we're going to win in 2028. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, Tuchel, we're not going to win with Tuchel in 2026. At the time, I thought he would leave after that, but look how things change. Tuchel, we're not going to win in 2026 because we're going to wilt in the heat. I didn't even know about the aircon stadiums at that time. I felt we were going to wilt in the heat. Now, as a characterization of our loss, not quite correct, but we did lose in 2026. And I was like, we're going to win in 2028 because it's a home tournament and we'll probably have Lee Carsley by that point. I was wrong about that too, as it stands, but we shall see. I stand by that prediction. I made it in 2024. I have no fucking receipt for it, but I stand by that prediction. But, I mean, did I get excited when we were in the semi-final against Argentina? Yeah. I mean, I wasn't stood there being like, well, Nostradamus, predicted that we won't make it, so I'm not scared and I'm not sad. I was very excited and I was very sad. But now it's happened, I am sort of emboldened in that feeling that I had that, like, Nations League, home tournament, I think that could be the thing that takes us over the line. Okay, let's move on to golf. The Open has just finished. I enjoyed it. I'd say the one player that I really, really want to see win a major is Tommy Fleetwood, and he had a bit of a surge, didn't he? He was doing all right on day 3, and then day 4, frittered by the wayside. Congratulations to Mr. Fox. Played incredibly well. Seemed to be the only one who was genuinely aggressive in those final holes on the final day. Massively deserved it. We will be talking about golf more on this show. F1. A summary of this season's F1 feelings for me are, I'm finding it very odd. Now we have the hybrid engines. I'm finding it odd because it feels like, to a certain extent, you could argue that the sport is more in the driver's hands because of the power regulation that they have to take into account now. On the other hand, you could say it's less in their hands because of the power regulation they have taken. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's difficult to see the sort of like the drivership in this year and whether it's still intact or not. But I like the competition of this season. I like it that there's a lot of teams vying for top spot and there's a lot of drivers vying for top spot. Genuinely, I would say it's not just Fugazi. I think they are. And I like the races themselves. I think there's a lot more overtaking. The reasons for that you can debate, but I think the excitement of the races themselves is up. And I think I like it that you don't see those like pole position to win domination races very often at the moment. I really like that. Feel sorry for George Russell. Everything's going against him. I find myself cheering for Hamilton still, even though I know it's not going to happen in terms of a title charge. My heart wants it to. My brain tells me it's not. But yeah, love the competition. Really excited. So let's talk about just what I want from this podcast. Like I say, is to a platform to discuss all my sporting passions. So, for example, coming up, you might be listening to this after this has happened, but coming up, we have Joshua fighting again on Saturday, a warm-up fight against Preng before he hopefully fights Tyson Fury by the end of this year. I'd love to talk about that. You may already know the result of that. It's too fucking late for Fury versus Joshua, 5 years late at least. But, I will be tracking the story and I'll certainly be watching. Whenever they were asked about it, Anthony Joshua would always say, well, will you watch? Even when he's like getting older and everyone was like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I will, mate. But can you fucking crack on with it? And Premier League's going to start again soon. We'll talk about that. Like I say, we'll talk about Nations League. We'll talk about F1. The US Open tennis major is in August. Snooker season starts in autumn. There's a lot to talk about. This was just an opening rant about the World Cup. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being one of the seed listeners of Fred Asquith on the Ball. This was Fred Asquith on the Ball with me, Fred Asquith. Me and you are going to be chatting sports. You can follow the pod at Fred Asquith on the Ball, TikTok, Instagram, rate and review. Fob is on the up. Thank you for listening. We're on the ball.